My name is Eric Laschever, and I'm Williams class of 78. I started with the class of 77, and I took a year off. And the year I took off has a lot to do with how Wolf came about. During that year, I did a semester program in outdoor education with the National Outdoor Leadership Schools. And during that program, I met an incoming Williams class of 80 young woman. Her name is Melinda Bergamini. And as we were taking a bus between Yellowstone National Park and Canyonlands, she was saying, well, what's it going to be like to be a freshman at Williams, and what's the orientation like? And I said, well, Williams is great, and the orientation is mostly standing around at keggers. And since I wasn't a big beer drinker until I graduated, I guess, it was not my best way of meeting people. And so I said, it's a great time, but try and use that orientation period to, go off in smaller groups or do something like that. And we finished the program, and I didn't see Melinda the first month or two of coming back to Williams, and this would have been in the fall of '76. And then one day she said, I've been talking with some of my friends, and we've all agreed that we'd like to try and create a program to add to the freshman, and I understand now it's first year, so I gotta make that move, the first year orientation. And Melinda and I had talked about doing something similar to what Dartmouth had been doing, which was taking groups out into the areas around the college that they're just so plentiful and great for hiking and getting out in nature with smaller groups. And so Melinda had a group of friends, and I'll name them because they all were very important in getting this off the ground. Sue Conley, Jane Golay, Paul Gorin, I mentioned Melinda already, Tom Black, Michael Hill, and I think that's the group. And we started getting together to say, well, what would this look like? And we began talking to some of the faculty and to see how it might come together. And one of the things that was interesting is, especially looking now where it is 40 years later and so well established, is there were a lot of people that weren't really sure that it was a good idea. And so we had some preliminary meetings, and in some of the initial ones we were actually discouraged from pursuing it. And we couldn't quite figure out why, and we asked some questions, and one of the people who was saying, that they didn't think that it would be possible said, well, beginning part of school is busy. There's especially getting all the facilities ready, and we don't think that the facility staff is going to be able to take the additional duties. It's adding a burden. And so we figured out who was the head of facilities at the time, this group of students, and a smaller group. We didn't want to overwhelm them with all 6 of us, so we had a smaller group go and sit down with them and say, we're trying to figure out if there's any way we could help so that the facilities could be available for a small number of the students. And the head of facilities said, oh, no problem, we can do this. And so we had that information available, and so the next time there was a decision-making meeting about this and the issue came up, and we were told, well, we think it's going to be a problem with the facilities personnel, we were able to say, well, we've already talked to them and they've said that they could do it. And there was a vote of I think it was the Council for Student Living, and they agreed to do a test run of it, and so that coming fall, which was the fall of '77, there were maybe 5 or 6 groups with 7 or 8 people, and so maybe a total of 40 people altogether might have gone out. And it was a big success. Everybody came back safely, and that was probably the biggest concern. And it's just mind-blowing to come back and to understand that there'll be close to 400 people out this fall. And Scott Lewis, who has been the champion of the program for the last several decades, sent me the schedule of what everybody's doing, the leaders, to prepare, and that too is really impressive to see the organization now behind taking the students out. And I wanted to just share, I talked to the founders before coming to just get some memories, and one in particular I thought would be good to share. And so where would we be without cell phones? This is from Paul Gorin, and we all had nicknames by the end of this experience creating the program, and his nickname was Great Shakes, because he would like to get people together by having milkshake parties. So instead of, a party, a more traditional college party, we'd all get together in his suite and make milkshakes. So his nickname was Great Shakes. And he said, in describing the experience and its lasting effect for him, he says, 40 years later, I still have the closest of friendships with my Wolf coordinators and those who went on those first trips, and could not be more pleased that decades later we share these experiences with generations of Williams students. And he signed it, Paul Great Shakes. So I think Paul's speaking for all of us who were involved in that early stage of the program, that it's just really great to be back here 40 years and to see the program still going strong. And it's a play on my last name, which is Laschever, and was my typical last name was Lash. And for some reason they started calling me the Lush, and it wasn't because I drank or anything, but it just was, that's what they called me. So, and some people still call me that. Like, we were just house sitting for Mike Hill, who was one of the founders, and he still calls me Lush. And so, first of all, this is the second Wolf t-shirt that I've ever owned. And the first Wolf t-shirt was, we at a given point, I think when we knew the program had been approved, we decided to make t-shirts for the founders, just for our group. And it was interesting because at that time, all of us were sort of anti-t-shirt. It was like, oh, I'm not going to wear a t-shirt of some organization, I'm too independent for that, or whatever, I'm too cool to wear a t-shirt. But we all decided we were going to get a Wolf t-shirt, and at that point, I think Paul might have been known as Great Shakes by then, but and I think they may have been calling me the Lush. But it was a really plain gold or yellow t-shirt. You know how the colors are purple and gold, sort of, right? Am I remembering that right? Yeah. And so we got it with the yellow background or the gold background, and then on the back it just had the initials, and then just in the corner, really small, it had the nickname. And I think that in some drawer of memory things, I have this shred of a yellow t-shirt that still has the Lush on it. So, but we didn't get nicknames until sort of towards the end. So for me, it was probably the best experience that I had at Williams was being with that group and having this idea and working to see if we could make it happen. And they're all really great people, and I think it made me feel more connected to the college. I had taken a year off between my sophomore and junior year, partly I think it's more common now, but I can remember when I took it off, one of my classmates said, "Aren't you worried about being a year behind everybody?" And it was like, gee, I hadn't thought of that. But part of it was not having completely found my place at Williams and wanting to get some more experience before coming back. And by finding that group of people to work on that project, it really gave me a feeling of having something here that was really meaningful to me. And the fact that it has continued, it's like I don't think anything that I've been involved in that has 40 years later I can look back and say, wow, it's still there, and it has become part of this has become part of the college. And so that's, to me, it's one of the reasons I wanted to come back and just experience what it's like now, and the group that's going off this year, just to be part of the energy and see how it's all come together. And I don't know if it's appropriate to use this, but it is something that I think is, to me, it's worth saying. One of the founders has passed away, and he was absolutely a great guy, a great outdoorsman, and I think any time that the group of founders is together or talking with each other, there's always a moment to remember Tom and his friendship and what he contributed to the group. So this is just my opportunity to do that. And the other thing I think that's worth saying is that the rest of the founders got together earlier this summer, and for a mini reunion. And there were some extended friends in that group that hadn't been directly involved in Wolf, but as Paul indicated, the group had remained very close throughout their time at Williams, and has remained close and very supportive of one another since then. Some early spring hikes we did, and I think once we did a winter camping thing up there. Is it still have that like stone thing at the top, like this?
Yeah.
But it's all. Then it was all open to the. It wasn't really enclosed. It was pretty cold.
You said it was in the spring, but would that have been one of the
that was trips? That wasn't Wolf. That was just people going
the friends
out.
going up.
Yeah, that would have been. I think we even cross country skied up to it. I think Leghorn was. There was one of the first. The leaders the first year was a guy named Ken Leghorn, and he was also he was probably my best friend at Williams, and he was the one who years later still called me the Lush. I mean, even when I didn't want him to, and sadly he passed away also this past May.
But he was a mountaineer.
He ended up graduating from Williams, going to Alaska to organize a trip of Williams classmates and one of his classmates from high school to climb Mount McKinley.
Wow.
And they came very close to summiting, and one of them got pulmonary edema, which you can't really, it's not a matter of how well conditioned you are, it's more just how the body you're born with, and some people are more susceptible to it. And it was probably the most physically fit person in the group, and they had to make a decision about whether to summit or to immediately get him down, and of course they decided to begin going down the mountain so that he would start recovering. And the one, and I don't know if we're still rolling, and I don't know if this should make the cut either, but what I would say, the other thing that the Wolf experience really showed me was the importance of being prepared, and how to deal with resistance. You think you have a great idea, but you're in an organization that already has a lot of traditions and may not be ready for your great idea. But that thing where we went to the maintenance people so that when that issue was raised, we were able to actually say, well, we've talked to them and they've already said it's okay. It was like, it was really a great lesson about how to work, how to prepare, and to be ready to hang in there, even if there's a little initial resistance to an idea.